Hello, this is Mrs. Groves. Today we're going to be covering a new chapter on exponents. And your homework tonight is going to be, if we do not complete these notes, is to go to my website, complete the notes, or watch this YouTube video in entirety. Also, your homework is going to be the 8.1 Practice B worksheet. And those answers are also on my website. So for next class, you're responsible for having this completed. It will be collected, and there is going to be a warm-up or a pop quiz next class, and that will depend on a lot of factors. So be prepared to take a quiz on these concepts. So make sure you go through and understand the rules of exponents. Exponents have a lot of rules, and so we are going to be going through the rules, and you should have this note-taking worksheet, which is the 8.1 notes. And as we go through the 8.1 notes, we're also going to go through the 8.1 Practice B worksheet so that you know the required work when you're doing exponent problems. So let's get started. Now, the first thing is that we have to go through and make sure that we understand terminology. We have two terms. We have two words, vocabulary words, that we need to understand what the difference are. The difference is between terms and factors. Terms are separated by addition and subtraction signs. So, an example of three terms would be something like 3x minus 4y plus 10. And the terms are 3x, negative 4y, and 10. So that's the definition of terms. Now, when we're talking about terms, I also want to make sure that we review like terms. Like terms have the same variables raised to the same exponents. So if we have 5x and 2x, the variables are both x, and they are raised to the first exponent. And so 5x and 2x, we can combine like terms to get 7x. The next vocabulary word is factors. Factors are separated by multiplication signs. So for numeric factors would be like 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And factors are used with exponents because think to yourself, how can we rewrite 3 times 3 times 3 times 3? Well, if you remember exponents from your pre-algebra, that is 3 to the 4th. Now, 4 factors with variables would be like 4 times x times y times z, which we could also simplify. We have 4 factors all separated by multiplication. We could simplify it as 4x, y, z. So one more term that I want to make sure that you are completely comfortable with is expressions. Expressions are combinations of operations and your operations are your addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Numbers, variables, and symbols of inclusion. Okay, so those are like your parentheses, brackets, set notation. Okay, those are symbols of inclusion. So an example of an expression would be something simple like this: 2 with parentheses, 3 plus 5. And to find the answer to an expression, we evaluate. Okay, very important. We evaluate expressions. So if I want to evaluate this, I would follow order of operations. So I would do what's in the parentheses, which is 8, 16, okay, is the value to this expression. So those are 4 important definitions. I'll make that a little bit bigger. So now we're going to proceed with talking about expressions with exponents. All right, so if we have 2 to the 5th, okay, 2 to the 5th is called the power. Okay, so this whole thing is a power expression. The 5 is the exponent. And the 2, you know what that is. the 2 is the base. So we want to evaluate this power expression. And we're going to go and we're going to start with a very good foundation. The first thing we want to do is to expand this power 2 to the 5th to a product of factors. So 2 to the 5th as a product of factors is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Okay? There are 5 factors. Now, to evaluate the power, we want the answer. So mentally, you're saying to yourself, 2 times 2, and you don't have to show this work, is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So I have 2 times 2, 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, and I want to multiply it by 2 again, and that gives me 32. You could have done it mentally. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. Right? Now, we will do this in a moment and get calculators, but let's keep going without calculators. So we're going to go back to how do you do this with a calculator in a little bit. So we're going to go back to that. So I want to make sure that you guys are comfortable with how to write these 3 power expressions in words. So this 10 to the 1st is the same thing as saying 10. There is an implied 1. So we would say this is 10 to the 1st. Since the exponent is 1, we expand it, so we have 1/10. So the value of this is simply 10. Easy peasy. So now we don't say 10 to the 2nd. What do we say? Excuse me. We don't say 12 to the 2nd. We say 12 squared. All right. And so now, as a product of factors, 12 times 12, we evaluate it and we get 144, and that's our final answer, so we circle it. Now, the exponent is 3. We don't say 5 to the 3rd. We say what? 5 cubed. Write it as a product. 5 times 5 times 5. And we then are going to say 5 times 5 is 25 times 5. The answer is 125. Okay, so now we're going to be switching back and forth between this worksheet, which is practice B, and the notes. This standard that you're going to be doing is NAQ.c. And the first objective for this standard, this is a numbers and quantity standard, is to evaluate expressions like 10 to the 5th, negative 2 to the 3rd. You're not allowed to use a calculator when you're doing this. And just to reiterate, the level 1 objectives are does not meet. So whenever you have a does not meet problem, you must write as a product of factors. You must write as a product of factors. So we're going to do number 2 together so that you can see how to clearly show your work. For the does not meet, you have to write it as a product of factors, 5 times 5 times 5. And we just did this one. So 5 times 5, 25 times 5 is 125. So at this point, what I'd like you to do is get a calculator. And then we will continue to work on this. So now we're going to do example 2. We're going to evaluate powers with negative numbers. And so here, whenever we have negative numbers, we have x to the 4th, which is going to be negative 2 in parentheses to the 4th. We're going to expand it as a product of factors. So that is negative 2, and we're going to write negative 2 4 times. Times negative 2, times negative 2, times negative 2. And if we evaluate this, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, times negative 2 is negative 8, times negative 2 is positive 16. So now we're going to do x cubed, and we are going to take the negative 2 and substitute it for x, and it's to the 3rd power. So this is negative 2 cubed, which is negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So look at this. Here we have an even exponent, and our answer is positive. Here we have an odd exponent, and our answer is negative. So, negative numbers raised to an even exponent is positive. Negative 2 to the fourth, you know, is going to be positive. So you don't have to worry about the negative. Your answer is going to be positive. So then you can just say to yourself, 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. That gives me positive 16. Okay? A negative number raised to an odd exponent is always going to be negative. So negative 2 to the third is going to be a negative number. So in this example, we know that negative 2 to the third is going to be negative. So we can make it simple and just say 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. Negative 8. All right. So now we're going to go back to this worksheet. And for problems 1 through 8, we have to write, there's no calculator, we have to write it as a product of factors. So negative 2 to the third is negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. We know that since that's odd, our answer is negative. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, negative 8. So now I want you to know how to do these problems with a calculator. So we're going to go back to our notes. And for this example, if I have 2 to the fifth and I want to use the calculator, and I have a similar calculator but not the same as you. I'm going to put in the number 2, and I'm going to look for something that I call a caret. Look for what this symbol is on your calculator. Caret. And then we're going to put the exponent 5. Hit enter. And magic. These are equal. So now I'd like you to use your calculator and do numbers 9 and 11. Now the calculator command for this one is going to be 4 caret 6. You don't have to show that. And the calculator command for this is going to be parentheses, negative 2, close parentheses, caret 10. So I'm going to give you a moment to do those two problems. Okay. And all I'm looking for here is the answer. It says no work needed. So I'm going to put in 4 caret 6, and you should get an answer of 4,000 and 96. Next, this is in parentheses. Negative, oops, I'm going to clear this. Parentheses, -2, close parentheses, caret, 10. And notice that the answer is 1,024. That was even, so you knew this had to be positive. If you got the answer as a negative number, you forgot parentheses. -2 caret 10 is wrong. Okay? Wrong. You must use parentheses, especially when you have negative numbers. Alrighty. All right, so now we have the product rule. The product rule, we're going to do an exploration. We have 4 cubed and 4 squared. What's the base? The base is 4. So here, we want to expand 4 cubed. So it's 4 times 4 times 4. Okay. And then we want to expand 4 times 4. So how can we simplify this now? We want to write it as a single power. So the base is equal to 4. The exponent is, there's 4 plus 2 is 6. Okay, so if I write it as a single power, it's 4 to the 6th. So the rule for the product rule is that if you have the same base, add exponents. So for example 1 and example 2, what are the bases? Keeping this simple, the base here is 2. The base here is 2. So the base is 2. So what we're going to do is we add the exponents. 2 plus 3 is 2 to the 5th. And that is in exponential form. 2 to the 5th, you can mentally do that. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So that's 32. Okay. So now we want to do this problem. There is an implied 1. So we're going to have 2, 1 plus 3 is 2 to the 4th. 2 to the 4th, do it mentally, is 16. Now what happens if we have negative numbers? Well, we do the same thing. Same base, add the exponents. To multiply powers having the same base, we add the exponents. So here, the base is negative 2. So we use parentheses. We have negative 2. We are multiplying, so we add the exponents. 2 plus 4, negative 2 to the 6th, and we see that negative 2 to the 6th, that's an even exponent, so my answer is going to be positive. And you multiply 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64. One more problem. Here the base is negative 5. We're multiplying. So here we have negative 5. There is an implied 1. So here we're going to add 1 plus 2. Don't forget the parentheses. Negative 5 cubed. Okay, that is odd. So we know our answer has to be negative. 5 times 5 is 25, times 5 is 125. So that is negative 125. So now we're going to go back to the worksheet. The second criteria or objective for partially meets, the work you have to show is you have to show how you add your exponents. So we're going to do numbers 16 and number 18. And the work you're going to show is going to be the same for 13 to 20. So the base is 2. So I have 2. There is an implied 1. 1 plus 1 plus 4 is equal to 2 to the 6th. I should probably go back here and read the instructions to you. Evaluate numeric expressions with positive integer exponents. So the exponents are all positive. Using the product power, which means when we multiply, we add the exponents. Clearly show your work. So this is clear work. Simplify the expression. So this is simplified. And now 2 to the 6th is what? Okay. is 64. So this is the work that you show. Show this work for partially meets. How does this work for negative exponents? Well, the base is -3. And I chose 18 so that you wouldn't get confused. You're going to have to take the -3, and it has an implied 1. Okay, so there is an implied 1. So -3, use equal signs, 1 plus 3. Don't forget your parentheses, -3 to the 4th. We know the answer. This is even. So my answer is going to be positive. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. All right. So the last thing we're going to cover is the product rule with variables. Right? Same thing. To multiply powers having the same base, so here we have our base is x. So our base is x. We're multiplying, so we add the exponents. So that's 4 plus 6. And that gives you x to the 10th. And because we do not know what x is, we cannot evaluate this expression. So here we have something slightly different. We have numbers and we have exponents. Here we have numbers. So when we do this, we simply multiply the numbers. So here, the first thing we do is we're just going to take 5 times 8. And 5 times 8 is 40. Now we have variables. This one has an implied 1. So the base is y. So we have y, 1 plus 5. So that's simply y to the 6th. 1 and 5 is 6. So here, for example, 7, we have basically 3 numbers because there's an implied 1. So we have 3 times 1 times 5. So that is going to give us 15. Now in this case, we have x's. So our first base is x. So we have x. There's an implied 1 here. 1 plus 2. So that is x to the third. But we have another variable. We have y. But there's nothing for y to be combined with, so we have y to the fifth. Okay, so this is expanded. And so we get y to the fifth, and that's our final answer. Okay, you have to show this work. So we're going to do one more problem. On the worksheet. Okay, so here, these are variables. So the work, there's an implied 1 there. So it's x1 plus 6 plus 4. We have the same base. We're multiplying. We add the exponents, and we get x to the 11th. So that's the end of the lesson for section 8.1. Your homework is to finish this worksheet. The answers are posted on my website. But for those of you that are going to the YouTube video, I'll place the answers here so they're all in one spot. Okay, so if you're looking at this, you could pause this. That's the answers to the front, showing the work that you're required to do. And here are the answers in the back. I should point out that this step you do not have to show. This step is the mental step. Okay, so what I'm highlighting here, you do not have to show this work. This is the mental step, what you do in your head. And there are the answers to the back. If you can't read this, then you can go to my website because I have the answers posted. That's it for now. Have a great day. And make sure you're prepared for a pop quiz next class on what we cover here. Saying goodbye from Paula and Ozzy.